There are no guarantees in life. So when we talk about the last third on this show, we're talking about what is reasonably foreseeable and what are the things that you can and should do to best plan to achieve not our goals, your goals. In John Amos's case, John Amos's goals. If the question is, what could you have done and what should you have done given what you knew, you did the right things. And that's where we all want to be.
Welcome to Life's Third Act, an enlightening look at estate planning, retirement, and beyond.
Welcome to another episode of Life's Third Act. This week we're going to talk about John Amos. Now, some of you are thinking, who is that? And others are thinking, oh yeah, I used to watch him all the time on Good Times.
Yeah, he was America's favorite dad.
Yeah, though he had a number of other roles, we'll talk about that, but Good Times especially, I think America became most familiar with him, which was a couple years, right? So John Amos died last year, but we think that the things that have gone on related to his probate estate are interesting, and there are also opportunities to learn. I will tell you that it's a little difficult to obtain as much information about John Amos as some people we've done. When you say,
I would definitely agree with that.
Certainly if you look up John Amos, you see lots of information, but often we're able to find more court records in addition to more sort of insider interviews and things where we can get a much better inside picture of their lives, and particularly the period that we're concerned about, which is the last third, what we call the third act of their life. So yet there is information and there is an opportunity to learn here. And, his life was interesting. So let's talk about it. Let's start with, as we always do, his biography. Tell us a little bit about his life.
He's a very fascinating guy. He had quite the career before he got into acting even. He, of course, we know him best as, like we mentioned before, the dad in Good Times. But, of course, he was a kid before he got to Good Times. He was born John Allen Amos Jr. back in 1939 in New Jersey. And he's very proud to be from New Jersey. Now, an interview that I watched on Vlad TV, really good stuff if you want to dig a little bit deeper into the life of John. But he did state in that interview that his dad was in the service, so he didn't see him much as a kid. But then later in life, when he was about, I think it was 17 or 18, his later teen years, he did get to spend more time with his dad and fell in love with his dad. And he and his dad were best friends. He just truly enjoyed that relationship as an older child with his parent, well, one of his parents. And, of course, his mom was in the picture the whole time. And he had a few siblings. I believe it was 3 that he had. And he, grew up. It was not an easy life. So he really valued, hard work. He did go to college. He attended Long Beach City College and Colorado State University on a scholarship. He was playing football, and he was 5'11", which all the photos I've seen of him and in videos and in movies, he always seems so much larger than 5'11". Because you think about most football players, he was kind of on the small side.
Yeah, but for his age in that era, he may not have been as
maybe.
much.
But he just seems so much larger
Right,
than life.
He does. Seems like a big guy.
Yeah, he's quite the character. He ended up getting a degree in sociology, and he did go ahead and get into that field. He worked as a social worker at the Vera Institute of Juvenile Justice. They also worked with adults as well. You don't see very many actors coming from that kind of industry. He also got into advertising, copywriter before he got into acting. Now, again, along that way, he also kept revisiting football. So he even got into some boxing at Colorado State when he transferred there, but he played professional and semi-professional football. He did 2 tryouts with the Kansas City Chiefs, didn't quite work out. He was also with the Denver Broncos, and he actually signed a contract back in 1964, and it only lasted 24 hours before they cut him.
Well,
So it just wasn't the thing for him.
Yeah, I think he had an injury though, didn't
Yeah,
he?
that too. That didn't help. But still, I mean, he was dropped, but he kept this football, and everybody thought he should be a football player because of, he was a wide guy. Like I said, he wasn't as tall as I would have thought he was, but he was a large guy, so perfect for football. So, and that became his dream too, is to become a professional football player. But as we know, that didn't quite work out. He did a couple, I think it was a TV commercial too, in which he played a football player. Everybody just always typecasting him in as a football player.
Well, and then thereafter he coached, and so it was very important to him. And,
definitely.
And so as I understood, it was like a hamstring injury that occurred, and he couldn't, and he was required as a condition of starting the season to do this 100-yard dash.
Yeah.
And he wasn't able to do it, so.
Yeah. And then while he was in, and I believe it was for football, another team, and it just didn't work out. And while he was in Canada, the very first McDonald's opened there. And he ended up working for McDonald's. And I mean, he was cutting fries and everything.
Now, this is after college.
Yes, this is all after college. All the different things that were going on in his world.
So he was really trying to figure out what he was going to do with his life outside sports.
Yep. Tried a couple different things. And, well, somehow he just kept there was a love of writing there too. And when he got let go from the Kansas City Chiefs, he actually wrote a poem about getting cut that the players absolutely loved. They wanted to keep him, but the coach was like, we can't keep him because he can write well.
No, right. Although they've kept him for worse reasons. But,
True.
But I will say that his boxing actually had some success too. He was a Golden Gloves champion of sorts. I don't know what stage of the finals he got to, but it was a pretty advanced stage, and he was apparently pretty good. Now he probably wisely thought, I don't want to pursue that as a career.
No, football.
Yeah. So let's talk about, he makes his way into acting. He's about age 30. What's his first gig that we know of?
His first TV role is such a classic, right? He was part of the Mary Tyler Moore Show. And a lot of folks thought when he would come on, and even I think it was a joke within the show, he played the weatherman. And again, everybody just assumes he was the sports guy because of his size, but he was actually the weatherman.
Okay. And he did that. He wasn't on every show, but he was on periodically for a period of, 2 to 3 years?
Mm-hmm. And he truly enjoyed it. It was from 1970 to 1973. So he had a good time there. And then, before you know it, in 1974, he starred as James Evans Sr. in Good Times.
And had that gig for 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm. And then things just kind of...
Well, he had a disagreement with the management. It's interesting. Of course, I look at the decision to pursue sociology as a degree, and the fact that he worked temporarily in a sort of public service agency in that way for a period after college. And I can see where he had strong opinions about things related to racism, but also about poor, about unfairness economically as well as in other ways. And I think he was always outspoken his entire career, and perhaps to his detriment. I think that, for example, this dispute that developed on the show of Good Times or on the set related to the writing. The writing was done by, I assume, white writers.
Yes.
And his complaint was that this is not the way we, meaning black people, it's not the way we talk. It's not the way we wouldn't react that way. And apparently it was written from the perspective of these white writers. If I'm to believe, this would be the position that John Amos would take, that it's because the writers weren't in a position to understand well the way the black community would react and deal with these various circumstances.
Yeah, they were missing the experience of an African American.
So he objected, and apparently multiple times. It's not clear to me, but I think he was fired.
Yeah, they actually killed off his character in the show.
Yeah, I know, but the question is what happened behind the scenes. And I think that I've read some places that he resigned. They gave up the show. and it may be, in fact, a combination, because if you become disagreeable enough, you're essentially saying, look, if you don't like me, let me go. So it's probably a combination of things. He probably wanted off because he just strongly disagreed. When I look at decisions like that by actors, things they don't like that don't relate to the paycheck, I don't know, maybe I'm too mercenary, but I tend to think that it's often a better decision to hang in there and you can still complain at the level that you still retain your job.
Yeah.
But these stands of principle, they are admirable in the aftermath, and perhaps it's morally such a person is morally superior. I mean, I won't argue that. But from a practical standpoint, you have a family, you're wanting to create a legacy regarding your acting, and to the extent that actors especially do things that diminish their opportunities to be actors.
Yeah. I mean, he could have lost it all after that.
Yeah. And it may have haunted him the balance of his career. He had a couple of, and we'll talk in a second, there are other things he did that were very significant. But you wonder, when you get a reputation that you complain on a job, it's not just actors. It's not just related to racism. It's not related to social injustice. I mean, just things you don't like on the job. If you become somebody who complains, then, employers tend to throw up their hands.
Yeah, and show you to the door.
Well, if it interferes in the workplace, certainly. So we don't know. I'm speculating. We don't have the inside scoop on this, but John did say that the reason that he left the show was because he strongly disagreed with these writers who didn't portray accurately the real experience.
Yeah, I saw an interview in which he didn't want to say that he regretted that, but with age, we get a little bit more experience, and he would have, I guess, talked about it differently. He would have gone about it differently if he would have been older at the time.
Yeah, I can believe that. So let's keep talking what his career was. He leaves Good Times. What happens?
Well, that happened. So that was in 1976. And so, of course, something like that was one of those moments in a person's career where they're like, ooh, am I going to continue? Is this it? But he ended up in such a huge movie. Actually, it was a TV series. It was a kind of a different thing in which the series was, I think it was over like 3 days, but it was like 2 hours each night.
Yeah, this is one of the first, what we call miniseries. It may have been the first miniseries.
I was just looking that up because I was curious. I see from the internet here it was the first television miniseries.
Yeah, because that was a new concept. You're used to having regular shows.
Yep, once a week, and that was like, I think, 2 or 3 nights in a row to complete that show.
Yeah, that was unique. And boy, I remember, and those of you who are close to my age, I would say above. Yeah, you'd have to be above 55 probably to really remember it. But all of you, we remember. We remember that was a big deal. People across America were watching that show.
Yeah. It was like an appointment viewing. Instead of just, now we can watch things whenever we want to. Even back, 20 years ago, people were recording things, VHS tapes or whatnot.
But you couldn't then.
Not then, no.
So, you had to rearrange your life so that at that time you were in front of your TV to watch these things, or you'd never see them again, presumably, unless they chose to air it again, that you would have no access. And he got attention in that role. He got favorable reviews.
Yes, he ended up, and he got an Emmy nomination for that. I mean, that was really the breakthrough role for him to be taken as a serious actor.
And, I still don't feel like his au revoir, whatever you want to call it, his body of work was as large as it should have been. Because thereafter, let's go through some of the other ones. We'll do it quickly. Coming to America.
Yes, that was great. And Coming to America, too.
Oh, he was in 2?
He was in that one, too, yes.
I didn't see that. So what else did he appear in?
Die Hard 2.
Yes, Die Hard 2.
And The Beastmaster, which I think I saw. I think my brother watched that, and I watched it. But it was so long ago, I don't really recall a whole lot about it, but he was in it. Yeah,
so, I mean, he definitely continued to have a career, but it just wasn't as full, F-U-L-L, as I would have thought it should have been. And the opportunities didn't come as frequently or as well as they could have. So anyway, wonderful guy, very principled. He throughout his career, he had a reputation, of being a man who cared about his family. On the family side, we have, which compared to the standards we have on the show doing celebrities, having only 2 marriages during the course of your career, 1 divorce.
Yeah.
That's exceptional. That's Ward and June Cleaver level among these celebrities. So he did his first marriage, which was his longest, was 10 years.
Yes, with the 2 children.
Yeah, and tell us about the children.
Children, he had a daughter first, Shannon, and she's probably about 59 now. She was born in 1966, but she is now a writer, producer, founder of Afterglow Media. If you recall, back in the day of MTV and rap, there was a show, Yo MTV Raps.
I don't recall that.
Yeah, she was a part of that. She was one of the producers and writers, as well as America's Most Wanted. She was part of that as well. And
she was a writer?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like they say, her dad, he was a writer.
Sort of.
And so an actor, and, he got into all that, and both of his kids did. So they had another child together, which, they're full siblings, again, just from his first wife. His son, who was born in 1970, Kelly Christopher, which they call KC for short. He, a director, producer. He's won Grammys for James McMurdy music video. He's collaborated with Lil Wayne and Fat Joe. So
I have to confess, I don't know who Fat Joe is.
I know some of them. I don't know all of them.
But so his kids are successful in a sense of the word. And the son spent probably more time with his dad toward the end than the daughter, not by the daughter's consent, she would say, or it wasn't voluntary that the daughter wasn't there. So we fast forward. There was a divorce from the first wife around 75 or so, and then a brief marriage of 1 year thereafter, which was, 78,
79 to an actress, Lillian Lehman.
Yeah, so no children of that relationship, 1 year. So it came and went. So really we're talking about one marriage and divorce that was of importance, relevance here, from which there are 2 children, not half siblings, but full kids from the same mother, same dad. So that makes this, the estate planning you would think would be more promising.
Simpler, yes.
You would think that there would be less potential for mischief and conflict in that scenario. And to some extent, you have a reason to think that would be the case, and we want to talk about why it goes sideways and why there were conflicts. John, I should go ahead and talk about some of the key things that I think so notoriously take people off their track, rich or poor, famous, infamous, or unknown, are things such as divorce, we talk about, and from the perspective of Cordell & Cordell, largest divorce firm in America, also do an estate planning group. But, we see from the inside kind of what happens in the divorce process and the harm that it does, not so much to children, though, yes, it does. It depends on their age. In some cases, children are not greatly disturbed by divorce. And in other cases, it dramatically changes the rest of the kids' lives.
Yeah.
So, but I don't like to generalize and say that it's always bad for the kids. That would be unfair. But it often is not good for the kids.
Do you think there's a magical age? You know what I'm saying? Like if it's kids that are preteen, that it's harder for them versus the littles?
Yeah, I as a generalization, I would say those middle years, because when they're too young, they don't remember or notice as much, one could argue. I'm not an authority on the psychological effects of divorce, but it's certainly something that any domestic relations lawyer sees up close day in and day out. And then you have those, though, who are maybe past the early teens, not the tweens, but just beyond. I think that they're especially vulnerable to divorce because they They've seen the relationship, but not as much as those tweens.
Yeah.
I think those years between, say, 5 up to 12, it's more than tweens, but still that age may be where it's felt most intensely. But again, I'm very reluctant to generalize just because it's driven so much by the personalities of the children. And there, some kids could go through a divorce that the rest of us would think was relatively uneventful, and it just be, from their perspective, a great trauma. So I would say, though, that in this case, as these things go for people, particularly in this position, there's a single divorce. There probably wasn't the fight over assets at that time that there would have been later, although he had success as an actor. But you often don't have, in those roles, you often don't have the residuals and the issues with intellectual property that you have if, for example, you're a songwriter or a performer in that way. It's possible his contract could have given him access to those things, but I doubt it.
Yeah, especially with
time.
the Mary Tyler Moore show. I have a feeling that when that show aired, they probably didn't have all the residual kind of things, and even with Good Times.
Yeah, if anybody had it on that show, it would have been Mary Tyler Moore.
Yeah.
But yeah, Good Times, I doubt it. So anyway, the divorce probably wasn't as conflict-ridden as we might have thought. There wasn't a woman that he was prepared to marry immediately after, so perhaps there was infidelity. I'll jump to the conclusion that there probably was, and just based on my cynical experience as a domestic relations lawyer. And so they part. He stays close to his kids. He continues to be active in his kids' lives. So there's every indication to think that he fathered as well as he could have, given that there were two homes and there was some geographical separation. He lived for a while in New Jersey. He lived for a while in Colorado. And then, of course, he lived in California. Yeah. And so there was some movement. I think that for most of those years, except, I don't know how long he was in New Jersey, but except for those years, I think that he was in the same city with the kids. And certainly in their adulthood, he was, they were regularly in contact. So the other things that we would look at when we're thinking about how well did someone plan the third act of their lives, it's less about how well did it in fact go, although that's important. But you really want, what's most important are the things you can control. And you can control how you plan. So if you make the right decisions, you do all you can, and still the train goes off the track, you shouldn't be happy about that, nor should anyone who's looking to you as a role model. But at the same time, if the question is what could you have done and what should you have done given what you knew, you did the right things. And that's where we all want to be. There are no guarantees in life. So when we talk about the last third on this show, we're talking about what is reasonably foreseeable and what are the things that you can and should do to best plan to achieve not our goals, your goals, each of your goals. In John Amos's case, John Amos's goals.
Yes.
So, and I think we know what those goals are. Often they're not real subtle. It's pretty clear. Often people want to take care of their children. They don't want their children engaged in conflict, particularly over them and over money. They don't want their children to hate each other. They want to be able to have perhaps some substantial financial contribution to their kids. In some cases, the goal is the opposite. I want to be sure that my kids are forced on their feet. Yeah. And that they have to fend for themselves, and I don't want to supply them money that I think will impair their growth. There's that reasoning, which is, who can argue with that? Yeah. That's not my plan for my kids.
Well, especially depending on the age. Whenever you write a will, you got to think about how old your kids are at that time, I would assume, too, and then revisit as they get older.
Yeah, that's true. And that's a good point for me to also pivot to talk about Cordell and Cordell. I want to mention here, Cordell and Cordell has an estate planning group, as we've talked in just the last year or two. This is new for Cordell and Cordell. The focus was exclusively domestic relations. But it's funny how acquiring the understanding of all those things that are associated with dealing with domestic relations matters in an interesting way, it is wonderful preparation and insight to be able to provide also wonderful estate planning, counsel, and direction and suggestions. So that's kind of one of the advantages that Cordell and Cordell has among many when it comes to estate planning is that we come to it with a lot of experience in litigation, which litigation means that that person, that lawyer, when they're advising you and you're doing your estate planning, they're the ones who can tell you under the most extreme circumstances what would your children, family members would face, what it would involve in terms of the likely allegations, the course of any conflict. That's important when you're doing estate planning. You don't want to build in that expectation, but you want to understand, what are those outer boundaries of how this could go. And that allows you to better prevent those things. So I want to be sure that I regularly bring this up on the show is to encourage you to contact Cordell and Cordell if you're thinking about an estate planning matter. We're very proud of our estate planning group. It's what they do. And yes, the collective experience from a domestic relations standpoint is hugely helpful for people in estate planning, for some people more than others, but for everyone helpful. So I encourage you, whatever city you're in across America, there's a good chance we have an office there, Cordell and Cordell. So give us a call and talk to our estate planning lawyers. All right, back on track. So when we think about things that people can do to better position themselves for success in the last third of their lives, the divorce thing we talk about a lot, but also substance abuse, whether it's alcohol, drugs, we have to have this as an item on the checklist is what happened there. And with John Amos, there's no, I mean, apparently he drank,
Yeah,
so
but
I'm reading.
Didn't see any stories though of he was just out of control.
No, I didn't see of any allegations that there was drug or alcohol abuse, meaning, of course, we all know what that means, but for our purposes especially, it means in ways that interfere with your earning capacity, that interferes with your ability to plan and save, do the things you need to for financial security, and then, of course, protecting your health. Those are all essential ingredients if you're going to have a third act that is successful by your definition. So professional success, there were earnings. I think that probably could have been handled better, but we won't judge that too much. Still, there was definitely sufficient resources that came in over the years. I didn't see any evidence that John Amos was profligate, was wasteful. They dissipated assets on, what's the phrase, wine, women, and song. We talked about wine, but neither women or song either, apparently.
I mean, he seemed to live a pretty, chill life.
Yeah, I mean, he seemed like a good guy.
Yeah.
But there was not maybe the accumulation, the savings that should have happened, and that probably was just through bad financial advice and maybe financial mismanagement on his part. But certainly I'm not seeing the basis of alleging that there was gross, debauched or gross dissipation of assets. I just didn't see that.
Yeah, maybe he just, gave a lot of his money to his kids.
I
over the
think
years.
that's going to be part of an argument we're going to come to in a few minutes. And then ask the father, despite the fact that we're going to talk about conflict in a little bit, it seemed to me that John really valued his relationship with his kids.
And his grandkids as well. He was in their lives.
And we should mention that. So there are two grandkids. Both are from Shannon, right?
Yes.
And
from his daughter, his firstborn.
Yeah, his firstborn. So Shannon has two children, and Shannon, that daughter, one child is Kiera,
Yes.
and the other one is.
And his grandson is Jazz.
Okay.
So it's Shannon's two children. She has a daughter and a son. So you've got Kiera and Jazz.
Okay. So this is a good place to stop. We've talked about John Amos's life, his career, his marriages, his kids, two grandkids. So now we want to talk about the last stages of his life and then the thereafter, meaning those events that occurred immediately after his death and in fact are still going on, and then evaluate what the outcome was of his last act, final act. So we're breaking here. We'll come back for the next episode. And the next episode, we will talk about the balance of John Amos's life, his planning, how things went thereafter. So till next time, this has been another episode of Life's Third Act.
We hope you enjoyed Life's Third Act, sponsored by Cordell & Cordell, your advisors for estate planning and beyond. Subscribe and join us weekly for thought-provoking discussion and topics exclusively focused on estate planning and your financial future. Discover more at CordellCordell.com. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely on advertisements.